Welcome to I Feel Fat Today, the body image, eating disorder, and everything diet culture podcast. My name is Kelly Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me. I have very minimal makeup on because I am very close to burning out. Work is very insane. I never talk about my day job, and I'm not going to talk about it other than I am very stressed and very much feeling that I am burnt out. Um, and so I don't know why I chose the episode that I did for this week's podcast because I thought it would be sort of like an easy thing to do, but alas, it wasn't. So um, hopefully the output is good. And so all the hard work will be worth it. Anyways, just some housekeeping before we get into today's episode. Follow us on YouTube, where you can find full video episodes, just like the very one you're watching or listening to right now at I Feel Fat Today podcast on YouTube. And head over to Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Those reviews really help. So if you are a longtime lurker of this podcast and you haven't given your thoughts and feelings on it, please do that over on Apple. Give us a 5-star review. And that way I don't look like a crazy person screaming into the void, even though that's probably exactly what I am. And you can follow us on Instagram, where I post clips of the podcast and give you updates on the show on our Instagram at I Feel Fat Today. And you can follow me, your host, Kelly Taylor, at Hello, This is Kelly. Please follow me there. Apparently, having a high Instagram follower count is the only way to get booked these days. So do your girl a favor. And we also take listener emails and can answer any questions that you have, read any feedback you have about the show over to our email at ifeelfattoday@gmail.com. Try to keep things consistent so you can find us all over the place. And one other piece of news before we get into the episode is our dear friend May Plannert. She was guest number 1 of the show. She is filming her first ever comedy special for YouTube, and she needs people to come out to the show and have butts in the seats and laughs on the audio. So she's filming her first 30-minute special over at Grove 34 in Queens on April 17th. So if you're in the New York, New Jersey, even Connecticut, tri-state area, why don't you check it out? You can head over to www.grove34.com to grab tickets to May's special there. That's GROVE 34.com to find tickets to her special. Again, that's on April 17th. She's doing a 7 p.m. and a 9 p.m. show. And so for people that live outside of the city, maybe New Jersey or Connecticut, and you have to go into the office that day because these godforsaken jobs are making us go back in person all the time. If you're in the office that day and you want to maybe hit a happy hour and then head over to the special, you can do that because it's on a Wednesday. So check it out. I'm really excited. And I'm actually going to be doing some time on that show. I'm going to open up one of the shows so you can see me perform too. Okay. So that's the housekeeping. Now we're going to go into the episode. So solo episode. I haven't mentioned that. It's just going to be me and you today. I don't know how long this episode's going to be, but okay. So I remember I was a teenager in the early 2000s and I was watching the Oprah Winfrey show with my mom. I remember Oprah was always on at 4:00 and I was watching it. And the episode was about weight loss drugs and basically how they don't work. And I searched everywhere to try to find this episode on the internet. I couldn't find it anywhere. And maybe I'm making this up in my head, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. But I remember it was an episode of the Oprah show where they were talking about weight loss drugs and how they don't work and how they're dangerous for you. And they were going all into the stories of people that had tried, different weight loss drugs that were like from gas stations or infomercials, and the subsequent issues that they had thereafter. And I remember the question was raised on the show. I think this came up because the question was raised, why do people do these drugs if they don't work? And I remember Oprah saying very definitively, she was like, listen, if there was a weight loss drug that worked, you would know about it because I would be on it. And I remember looking at my mom and we bursted out laughing because we were like, that's so true. Like, if there was ever going to be a weight loss medication that worked for you, it would be one that Oprah was on. And so I guess that just doesn't exist because Oprah's not on any weight loss drugs. Cut to 2023, and Oprah is on, you guessed it, weight loss medication, our favorite injectable serum that once you inject it, apparently all of your problems go away. Baby, we're talking about Ozempic on today's episode. And not just Ozempic specifically. When I say Ozempic, we're talking about GLP-1 drugs. So that's Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, and there's probably a few other that I'm missing right now. But in 2024, as of a few weeks ago, actually, Oprah put out an ABC special called an Oprah Special: Shame, Blame, and the Weight Loss Revolution. And so I am calling this week's episode of I Feel Fat Today Oprah's Apology Tour. And while she doesn't apologize for anything, this is definitely this special, I think, after watching it. I probably watched this special 5 different times because I initially watched it just to check it out, see what it is. And as I was watching it that initial time, I thought, oh, I should talk about this on the show. And I had to go back and rewatch so many times because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. And so I kind of gathered at the end of everything that, Oprah was in a position where she kind of had to come clean about going on these weight loss medications, and good, bad, or indifferent, she's on them, and then created this special about it. And I'm going to go into all of the details of this special, so you don't have to go and watch it. You can just listen to this. And the reason why I call it an apology tour is because there were some conflicts of interest with the brands that she was working with that were in the weight loss space, and her going on these weight loss medications. It kind of is a little bit snake oily in a way. So I think this special was her way of clearing that up. And if I'm speaking vaguely, it's just because I don't want to get ahead of myself in my show notes. So instead of having to go on an actual apology tour, like if you were a comedian that got in trouble, and now you're going on to all these different podcasts to clear your name, that's not what Oprah has to do. Oprah is just large enough that she could say, hey, you come to me and listen to my explanation here on the ABC network. So that's why she put out this, her own 45-minute special about weight loss drugs. So let's get into it. Okay, so in a perfect world, ideally, I would be splicing in sound bites from the special. No, actually, let me rephrase. Let me take that back. In a perfect world, I would be able to take the 2 minutes, the 15 seconds to 2 minutes of information that I want to pull from the episode. I would just have it right here in this portion of the screen so that you can kind of watch along, and then I dissect it. But because this was on Hulu, it doesn't let you rip the video and audio from the Hulu. So what I'm going to try to do for certain parts of this podcast as I go through the episode, just to get some context and to help you understand what I'm saying, is to play parts of the show, this ABC special, so you can kind of hear parts of it. So I'm going to try to do that. I think I ran some tests before I started recording, and so I think I've got it down how to do it, but I may have to scrap it entirely and there's no sound bites. So if you're listening to this episode and you're like, hey, I thought she said we were going to listen to sound bites of the show, we're only going to do that if everything works when I go in to edit all of this together. So let's try it. Okay. So the show starts with a montage of people recounting how much weight they've lost after being on weight loss medications. And so think of the montage as just a series of TikTok videos where people are recounting being what it's like being on these different weight loss medications, and just sort of set the scene, set the tone of the episode. You know, it starts with a bunch of people recounting how much weight they've lost after being on weight loss drugs. Rosie O'Donnell, you can hear her say that she would be on them for the rest of her life. And then the montage sort of goes into the side effects that people get. So things like sulfur burps, which are just disgusting. And I don't even want to go into it. They sound as they are as disgusting as they sound. Sulfur burps. And then, nausea and vomiting. Okay, so the show opens after that montage with a very skinny Oprah, where she opens the show by saying she is doing this special for over the 100 million people that struggle with obesity. And then she said something that really struck me. She said, for 25 years, making fun of my weight was national sport. And like I said, I was a teenager in the early 2000s. I remember through the 90s, my mom watching the Oprah show. And so Oprah's been around, okay? Oprah is a dare I say, national treasure. Hey, stop it, you two. Sorry, the dogs just went crazy. they Finney disagreed with me saying that Oprah's a national treasure, but bitch has been around, okay? Oprah's been around. And so I remember all of the mean things that people said about Oprah. I remember watching Oprah's weight yo-yo on national television. Like I said, every day, 4 p.m., that Oprah show came on. And she, on this special, recounts how in 1990, she found herself on the cover of TV Guide's best and worst dressed list. And the person at the time, she said his name, I can't remember, but he referred to her on that best and worst dress as bumpy, lumpy, and downright dumpy. So just shamed, just raked through the coals of shame. And I really, really felt for her as I was watching this special. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Did I go into this special with a critical eye? I didn't want to, but part of me maybe knew what I was getting into, but not entirely. And when, opening this special with this personal story of how it had just been decades of being made fun of for her weight, and everybody agreeing and just being relentless. I mean, she can go rest her head on her golden pillows. Yes, she is a millionaire, TV personality, actress, writer, whatever. So there is that aspect to it because you are a public person. But be that as it may, she's still human and these things hurt. And so following that, she had kind of hit a breaking point, and she was so ashamed of herself. She shamed herself into starving and lost 65 pounds on a liquid diet. And then had this explosive episode of Oprah that even the younger generations know about and give her a lot of shit about, where she you see a very skinny Oprah wheel out 65 pounds of fat, depict 65 pounds of fat on a toy wheel wagon that she wheeled out, and everybody in the audience is freaking out, and she looks amazing. It's a very svelte Oprah. Hopefully I can find a picture and put it right there. And she says on this special how that day she started gaining the weight back. The day she filmed that episode of Oprah where she sort of like reveals her new body and wheels out the 65 pounds of fat in a wheel wagon, she started gaining the weight back right away. Because isn't that the cycle? Isn't that the vicious cycle? You starve yourself to lose the weight, and then you sort of fall back into it. And so she's saying with this special, her aim is to take away the shame and stigma of being overweight and how people deal with doing so, how people deal with being weight and subsequently losing weight. So her first guest of the show is Amy. Now, Amy lost 160 pounds on the weight loss drug Mounjaro. I was gonna play her sort of opening montage, but I think it'll be better just to like show a photo of Amy. There she is, and sort of before and after. So she was 30 years old and almost 300 pounds, and diagnosed with diabetes. So as a child, she remembers thinking food was her best friend. As early as 5 years old, she recalls obsessing about food and hearing that voice in her head that was just, making her obsess over food, even as young as 5. And then she sort of goes into recounting a series of unfortunate events that happened to her. So she was newly married and started having kids right away with her husband, and her first child was born premature. So that was a very tumultuous, stressful time in her life where it was weeks of going back and forth to the hospital. I truly cannot imagine a stress more raging and just completely something that would knock you off your balance completely than having a baby in the NICU, being severely premature. It was something, I don't want to get it wrong, but something like maybe 27 weeks the baby was born. So, it was crazy. And so very stressful situation with the premature baby. And then after that, not, shortly after that, her dad died, which knocked her off. And she recounted something very sad, but something I do relate to, where she thought, my dad died, which is obviously the worst. But my very first thought was, I don't have a black dress to wear to his funeral, which really, like, I relate to that feeling of, oh my God, this person died. Nothing to wear to the goddamn service, and so that was something that really struck me that I felt for. And then, okay, so following the death of her dad, she had another baby and COVID hit. So now she has a newborn and she's in quarantine. And so basically all of this is to this culmination of extremely stressful events happening to her. And she dealt with all that stress by eating. And she caused her to really get very, very high in her weight. Like I said, she was almost 300 pounds. And then she was diagnosed with diabetes. And that diabetes diagnosis really was something that hit her very hard and shut her off to the rest of the world until magical Mounjaro came into play. And so with Mounjaro, she felt like she was able to get her life back. So she sits down with Oprah and they talk about how before weight loss drugs, they always thought about food. And after Mounjaro, the food noise stopped. And so that's one of my big takeaways from this special, is that result of Mounjaro and weight loss drugs like it, how if you are always thinking about food, apparently you can go on these and that'll stop. I don't know, but that is what it is claiming, and what people are recounting after using it. So the food noise is gone. And she was talking about when she was sitting down with Oprah, how it's crazy to her now that she's on this weight loss medication. She can eat when she's hungry and stop when she's full. And how before that just wasn't something that she ever could really do. It just wasn't her reality. And then Oprah recounted how after the weight loss medication that she started, she didn't realize people didn't think about food all the damn time. Like, she's constantly thinking about food. And now this was the point in the special where I was like, oh, this is the Oprah I know and love. She's charismatic. Like, talk about a charismatic leader. Like, Oprah definitely could have started a cult, because she is funny when she's, doing this special, and she is talking about very serious things, but is able to give a lightness towards it and also get very like human and emotional about it as well. Um, which helps you kind of overlook the whole reason of this damn special. But yeah, so Oprah says, I didn't realize you guys weren't thinking about the damn food like I was. Um, and the one thing that really stuck out to me was Oprah asked her guest, Amy, what's different now that you are thin, besides like, the obvious health benefits of being thin and not having diabetes anymore. And Amy told Oprah that she is treated like a completely different human now that she's lost 160 pounds. But the biggest thing she notices, and this really stuck out to me, the biggest thing she notices is people are nicer to her children. Like when she's out with her children, they as a group all just get treated with the level of respect that they weren't being treated before when Amy was a much heavier mom. So I think, and the whole crowd audibly gasped when that happened too. It was like, oh yeah. And it's like, yeah, people treat fat people like fucking shit. I don't know if you've noticed. So that was Amy. Now our next guest. Our next guest is a doctor, Dr. W. Scott Butch from the Cleveland Clinic. And so his role on this special was to lay the groundwork that obesity is a disease. Obesity isn't a choice, obesity is a disease. So he talked about how people have higher weight set points. And so that means your weight is your weight. You can be over your weight set point and you can be under your weight set point, but getting to those places is through a lot of force. So if your weight set point, let's say, is 180 pounds and you're over that weight set point, that means something is happening outside of your normal day-to-day functionality that is causing you to be over that set point. And if you're under, that's when you're dieting, that's when you're exercising, that's when you're trying to do everything that you can do to an extreme measure to not be at your weight set point. And so he compared dieting to holding your breath underwater, which I had never really, I've experienced dieting feeling that way, but I've never heard it come from a doctor necessarily, but more on that. So then Oprah talked about with this Dr. Butch, she talked about how in the early 80s or late 80s and early 90s, alcoholism wasn't considered a disease. But as of 2013, obesity has actually been considered a disease. And so some people think that some people have the disease of obesity and some do not, just like there are people that can have the disease of like alcoholism and some do not. And my last main takeaway from the sort of doctors segment of the show is that they did say you would have to be on these weight loss drugs for forever, which they kind of like threw that in at the end where it's like talking about all these great benefits of the drug. But by the way, you have to be on it for forever. And I don't know why that sounds inherently bad to me, but I don't know. There's just something about being on these medications for forever that I don't get. Like take like an antipsychotic medication. There are people that have a certain degree of mental illness where they need to be on a certain medication or medications for the rest of their life. And some are fine with it and some aren't. And the ones aren't are the ones that go off and, have mental breakdowns, and so maybe it's because these weight loss drugs haven't been popular enough and like around enough for society to get used to the idea of being on them for the rest of your life. But it just doesn't feel like, I feel like anytime you get on a medication, shouldn't the goal be to get off that medication? And I'm saying that with the qualifier of you can be on these things for forever. Doesn't change anything about you to me, but maybe it's more of a personal preference. But then again, when I was in my early 20s and I was not early 20s, mid 20s, and I was, finally had gone on Lexapro. The relief I had felt from Lexapro was so immense and truly felt like such a game changing medication that I thought I could be on this for the rest of my life. And at the time, that's how I felt. Up until a few years ago when I was like, I wasn't getting the desired effects. And so I went off. And now I'm no longer on Lexapro, which is a medication I would have been fine being on for forever. So I don't know. I don't know. But it is, you hear it from the doctor's mouth on this Oprah special. People that are on these medications have to be on it for the rest of their life, which makes me think this whole thin being in, thin being back thing could just be another fad that is gone in a few years because people will get sick of it. Okay, so that was the second guest. Now, the third guest was 16-year-old Maggie. Now, Maggie was actually the main focus of the article from the Cut article called An American Girlhood in the Ozempic Era. And so that was an article that I actually did cover on the show. Forget what episode was that. What episode did I cover that article from the Cut? I think it was the one called The Kids Are on Ozempic. And it followed this young girl. And so I definitely liked seeing the main person or the main focus of that article on this Oprah special, because for someone like myself that had read the Cut article, you don't really, at least for me, like I wasn't able to really visualize and understand what this girl went through until hearing her story on here. Yeah, okay, so I covered it on episode 25. It's called I'm Psychic and the Kids Are on Ozempic. So if you want to check that out, where I covered an American girlhood in the Ozempic era. And so Oprah speaks with Maggie and her mom. And so Maggie is 16 years old. And at 11 years old, she was almost 300 pounds. And her mom described Maggie as a, quote, very good eater, which didn't feel normal to Maggie's mom. Like being a small child, and they're like from the South. So like being able to eat a pork steak, and that's not something that like small children can do, but Maggie had the ability to do it. And so her mom talked about how Maggie's weight just steadily kept rising through her childhood and adolescence. And even though she had Maggie playing sports, sent her to obesity clinics and weight loss camps, and truly nothing was working. And so at 13, because she was almost or over at this point 300 pounds, they actually had Maggie go through bariatric surgery, which feels extreme. I would say, though, for this case in particular, it kind of feels like a unicorn situation, maybe. Like, I don't know. I feel like 13 years old, 300 pounds, she's trying everything, and she can't lose weight. So they have her go for bariatric surgery. As a parent, I don't know what I would do in that instance. I don't know what I would do if I had a child that was gaining weight like that and being told that she's pre-diabetic. So she has the weight loss surgery. But according to Maggie's mother, she the doctors weren't satisfied with the results following the weight loss surgery. So they started Maggie on a weight loss drug called Victoza, which is another, well, actually, I'm sorry. Victoza is not a weight loss drug. Victoza is an anti-diabetic medication that is cleared for adolescents. And so that is the drug that Maggie was able to get on at 13 years old to continue her fight against obesity. And so so she went on Victoza because they were not getting the desired results from the weight loss surgery. And the doctor, this is according to Maggie's mom, but according to Maggie's mom, a doctor told her that if Maggie hadn't taken serious intervention in her weight, by the time she was 16 years old, she would have been 500 pounds if she didn't go on the weight loss medication. And another thing that was touched on when talking to Maggie and her mom on this segment was how they have to pay out of pocket for the medication. And so this is when the special starts to go into a little bit about how expensive these things are. So then after that, after those three guests, Oprah stands up on stage and starts going to the crowd and speaking to the crowd. So she speaks with one woman, Jewel, who didn't say her age. She looks like she's probably in her late 20s, early 30s. I don't really know. I'm bad at deciphering age like that, but I think she's like in her late 20s. And she was nearly 370 pounds. But then she started on the medication, and she says since she started the weight loss medication, it changed her relationship with food, and she's lost 85 pounds. And Oprah made a point to talk about how she feels like she could let go of the guilt of being overweight because she is fighting with her brain in this battle of obesity. And I think that's another point that the special keeps trying to hammer home is how this is a disease. This is a disease. This is a disease. And unlike alcohol, you can't quit food. And so that's sort of, they didn't say that specifically. They didn't say the whole you can quit alcohol, you can't quit food thing. But they were reinforcing that this is a disease and this is a medication that can help you with said disease. Okay, so then in the next segment, Oprah talks with the CEO of Weight Watchers. And so this is the real crux and point of this special, what I was referring to at the top of the episode. So in the next segment, Oprah goes into Weight Watchers and how she chose to step down from the board of Weight Watchers. So there would be, quote, no perceived conflict of interest for this special, and how she donated her shares in Weight Watchers to the Smithsonian African American History and Culture, so that she could have the current CEO of Weight Watchers on, Sima Sistani. And so that was her saying, look, I started with Weight Watchers in 2015, and now I'm on Ozempi's, and I've chose to step down from the board. I haven't made any money off of Weight Watchers. I sold my shares, and the money was donated to the Smithsonian. And so, my hands are clean kind of thing, which great move. I think that if Oprah had even kept her shares, then that people could say like, oh, she still made money off of just, deceiving people in a way. But then again, the woman's richer than God. So I think she can spare it. Okay. So she's talking with the CEO of Weight Watchers, Sima Sistani, and Oprah talks about how she joined the board of Weight Watchers in 2015, and she was doing the program. She was counting her points, she was tracking her meals, and she was doing the program, but then fell off of it. And so now Weight Watchers has changed their philosophy and has become and has bought a company in the weight loss medication space. So now in the past, the Weight Watchers that I was going to when I was 12 years old, it used to be a bunch of ladies go. We all get weighed in. Whoever came in weighing the most got a prize. No, I'm kidding. I feel like sometimes when I describe a Weight Weight Watchers meeting, it sounds like, the freaks are gathering together, but it's not, it wasn't that. No, the Weight Watchers that we know and love used to be, you go to a meeting, and you just talk about dieting, and you talk about how you were. Did you hit your points, or did you go over your points? Did you have extra points? What did you do with your extra points? Which was another thing with Weight Watchers I remember very vividly. Like, even in like my 20s when I would go on Weight Watchers, I remember like trying to like starve myself and hoard my points so that I could, really freak out on like 2 pints of Halo Top at the end of the night. So sick. So sick. Um, and so sorry, I got sidetracked. This is basically Weight Watchers talking with Oprah saying, we've changed our philosophy. We bought a company in the weight loss medication space. And so Sistani said, the CEO said, Weight Watchers is a clinically tested, scientific based and backed behavior change program. But they were missing the third prong, which is biology. And they want to provide that care. And so that's why, they are working together. Basically, Weight Watchers didn't work. And so now we're implementing a product in our service line that works. I mean, can we call it for what it is? Can we call it for what it is? And I don't know. I don't know. Listen, I'm a lifer when it comes to Weight Watchers. I've been there prepubescent, pre-adolescence. I was sitting in Weight Watcher meetings. So I don't know. I mean, the program maybe works if you stick to it, but I think maybe there's a reason why people don't stick to it because it's unsustainable. And like, this isn't that why we're here talking about this? Like, there could be that biological component, that compulsion that stops you from being able to stick to a program where you're being super restrictive. So definitely big PR crunch here for this special for the Weight Watchers Oprah, sort of partnership. And yeah, I also highlighted on this clip Oprah asking Sistani, why would anyone need Weight Watchers when you have weight loss medications? And, Sistani goes into how Weight Watchers is not just about weight loss. It's about community, education, and care. And so now their Weight Watchers is positioning themselves away from being a weight loss company to a weight health company. So interesting. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about any of this, aside from the fact I have to call out the obvious that, this is just a, make sure we look good thing. Also, maybe Oprah's in bed with some weight loss companies. I don't know. We'll go more into it. You decide. I don't know. It's not good or bad otherwise. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? I feel very complicated about it. There was something else about this Weight Watchers lady that I wanted to talk about, but I forget. Okay. Let's move on to the next segment of the show. We're almost done. I don't even know how long I've been going for. Okay, so the next segment I laughed about because it's about the side effects. So the Oprah opens up this next segment saying that a study found that 17% of patients stop medication, the weight loss medication, because of the side effects. That's 17%, right? So they cut to Dr. for Jennifer Aston, who explains that GLP-1 medications were FDA approved for diabetes management 20 years ago. So they have a lot of studies about these medications, which is something that's very commonly you hear when people that are very much opposed to these weight loss medications is they just came out. You don't know the effects. You don't know the effects, which is something I had said. But they've been around for 20 years. They've been around, but it just used to be people who used it for diabetes. And so this doctor also described diabetes as a disease and not a quote, character flaw. And then it cuts to Oprah asking to someone in the audience about their experience. Sorry, I got a text and I got distracted. Their experience on weight loss medication. So Rolanda tells us that she started taking weight loss medications about 4 months ago and had to stop because of landing in the hospital for vomiting because it was nonstop vomiting. She was vomiting up blood. And so she said, I was on Wegovy And I had to get off of it. And Oprah asked, "Are you considering other weight loss medications? Because maybe it could be a thing that this medication just wasn't the one that worked well for you." And she said that she's on Wegovy, but is considering other medication. She was on Wegovy, but is considering other medication, but is nervous. So that was like the one thing that they had on the side effects of these drugs before cutting to Dr. Velasquez, who says that she feels like the side effects are being overblown. So I'm going to play a minute of what she had to say about that. So let's hear.
They do have side effects.
I think that they've gotten overhyped. Medicines have side effects, but the important part is that they're mild to moderate in the research studies.
Yeah, I want to talk to have you answer this question about serious health effects down the road.
Yeah, we can speak to that. So there's been a lot of hype around like pancreatitis, gallbladder complications, concerns for thyroid cancer. So this has really not been shown in human studies that this is a downstream complication, and that really that the risk is less than 1%. And so when we're talking about any medication,
but people who have it, it is an issue for them.
So if anybody has a history specifically of medullary thyroid cancer is very, very rare. So if they do have that, we are not prescribing that medication. So we have to be able to keep up with knowing the data and recognizing that it's rare, but it's there, and we have to always screen.
Next, I'm going to talk with two global.
So this segment was all about the negative side effects of the weight loss medications, but not really. They asked one person about annoying side effects and then spent the rest of the time saying that the side effects weren't that bad. So be that as it may. Okay. Our Oprah's next guest. Again, we're almost done. I have two more segments and then we're done. So the next guest or the next segment, Oprah has on pharmaceutical companies, which first felt like a really weird choice on my first watch of the show. But then after realizing that this is one big commercial for Ozempic and other weight loss medications, it made sense why she had the two pharmaceutical reps on. So she had the vice president of Novo Nordisk, who produces Ozempic and Wegovy. And then and also on with them was the group vice president for Eli Lilly, who makes Mounjaro and Zepbound. So Oprah asked the rep from Novo Nordisk about what it was like at the offices when Ozempic hit on TikTok. And of course, the rep went into this long explanation about how they made a stand 2 decades ago that obesity is a disease, and excess weight and obesity isn't a choice, which I don't know if that's true, because these were diabetes medications. Weight loss was not something that these medications were being talked about, unless I'm wrong about that. I mean, she is the rep from these pharmaceutical companies, and pharmaceutical companies would never lie to us, right? Okay. So, she kind of was there to be the person that's like, we wanted this to happen. We wanted this to happen. We knew that these could be great for weight loss, but no one knew. No one knew. Okay. And then they talked about access. And so the reps from those two companies talked about how there was an unprecedented demand and there are doctors that are uninformed about the medication. So that's why you, as someone that lives in Gen Pop, would go to the doctor wanting to learn more about these medications, and the doctor maybe like brush you off and not really care to talk to you about this and tell you just to get your fat ass up and exercise, is because they're uninformed about the medications, which thank God for Oprah in this special so that we can get the word out there so people can be shooting up their semaglutide. And then they also talked about, they touched on how insurance companies do not approve weight loss medications as regularly, and that also impedes people's access to it. Oh. I wish semaglutide could be something I put in my coffee in the morning. Wouldn't that be great if you go to your coffee maker, you pour yourself a nice hot black cup of coffee, and you go into your fridge and you pull out a nice caramel flavored semaglutide milk alternative, and you put that in your coffee. You put a teaspoon or a tablespoon in your coffee, and it tastes good and you're satiated till it's time to eat at, the end of the day. Why can't that be how we get access to semaglutide? So that was her pharmaceutical rep portion of the show. I don't want to give them any more airtime because they're evil. And now that I think about it, yet another medication that we have to be on for the rest of our lives if we decide to take it and get its good side effects. Is curious how these pharmaceutical companies can't figure out how to get you off of these damn medications. Could that be something that affects their bottom line? Funny like that. I sound so dumb. I am not a scientist. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just filming a podcast that is going on for way too long. Okay. Last part, the sign off. So Oprah ends the show by saying that for people that are happy in bigger bodies and do not want weight loss medication, she says, bless you. And for people who think diet and exercise is the only thing that works and it works for you, bless you. And for the people who want to use these medications, she says, bless you. That's how she signs off. That's how she kind of ties it up all in a bow. And then lastly, she concludes on stop the shaming and blaming of living in a body and figuring out how to navigate doing so. And that was the Oprah apology tour. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed that sort of run through. I hope it wasn't boring. I hope it was kind of funny. I had fun going through it. I was a little stressed because I didn't want to miss anything. But I watched it now, so you don't have to. And I don't know. Yeah, I think that's all I got. Everybody, let me know your thoughts. Did I completely miss the mark? Did I totally miss the mark? Was I too forgiving? Was I too mean? Let me know. Next week we will be next week we will be back with guests. I had fun talking with just us. It had been a while since it had just been us, me and my 3 listeners who I love. Tell your friends. Tell your friends about this show, man. It's good. And people should listen. Yeah. Okay. I'll talk to you next Friday. Bye.